magnifier is going to be the need of a reticle. And that's what you gain. You have magnification in 3x or 5x magnifiers. What you gain is the reticle, and the reticle is the ability to do graduated and precise holds based off of a calculated drop that will then allow you, and holds for wind that you can then use at extended distances. And like with my 11.5-inch MCX with a Unity riser, it's like using 100-yard zero. I'm 2 inches of drop at 200. That means at 200 with a 2 MOA dot, that's 4 inches. And so I'm still underneath the dot of the red dot to 200. And then at 300, I think I have 9 inches of drop. And then I think at 400, it's like 18. So I can shoot. I'll beat up head plates at 300 yards with a magnifier and a red dot. So what are you trying to accomplish? Like, that's just understanding holds. On a head plate, I hold about 3 inches over the top, and I'm going to put it right in the middle of a head plate with an 11.5-inch gun. So if you're pushing past that and you're going 400, 500, 600, 700, then I think reticles and holds becomes what's kind of driving your choice to push past red dots and magnifiers. Let's see. Barrel length doesn't matter. Absolutely. And I'm going to do a whole, we did a video on this with Jimmy, but Jimmy came to a different conclusion than I would, only because I think he wasn't quite as far in his journey of long range yet to understand like velocity and how much, like 150 feet per second, even though, percentage wise, it might be 5% of your velocity at 3,000 feet per second. 150 feet per second is a crap ton of velocity. And so if you lose 150 or 60 or 80 feet per second or 150 feet per second, that's a lot of velocity to lose. And so losing that may or may not matter to you. And so if you're a 200-inch shooter, then a 10.5 will do everything you want it to do. If you're a 300-inch, 400-inch shooter, it's going to do everything you need it to do. Sorry, I need to tell my wife on a live. See, I'm telling my wife that I can't talk to her right now. And I'll see if I pay for that later. The barrel length. If you're trying to shoot extended distances and you're trying to get, not only the velocity, but the RPMs out of the bullet. So to get that bullet to spin enough to then use the gyroscopic stability and then maintain your ballistic coefficient over distance, then barrel length really comes into play. And so the gain in velocity and twist in a 14.5 or a 16-inch gun will lead to significantly better performance of things like 77s and those heavier bullets at distance, because you're just getting more RPMs out of them as well as more velocity. So let's see what else we got here. Shooters, Internet of Things. Okay. Current shooters. Oh, ballistic app, laser rangefinders, kestrels. What does devices talk to each other? That's all. So he's asking if it's worth setting up everything like when you're shooting. It's all. I think that you should have nothing outranks the fundamentals. And I think if you don't want to be where you're reliant on technology, if the technology goes away, then you are like mission incapable. And so if you if you have the basic fundamentals, you understand things like speed drop and quick wind, and you have paper data, you're not like completely shit out of luck. If you understand flash milling, if you can mill targets, like technology is amazing. It's a good enhancer. It's not like what you should be basing the entirety of your system off of. And I've watched a lot of people in matches go in with all the gear in the world, and then you take their gear away and they fall on their face because they've never trained without it. And so percentage wise, I think the thing is, it's like, I did a video on a pie chart once, and it's like, how much do you dedicate towards each skill set? And I think in the beginning, the fundamentals take up significantly more of your time, or should take up more of your training time than the ancillary add-ons. I think as you gain a more solid grasp of the fundamentals, and those become something that you kind of become subconscious thought, like you do things automatically, you've done them enough times, I think then that will take up significantly less of your pie chart, because then all you have to do is maintain. You don't have to build those skills. And so you still have to practice them, and you still have to dedicate time to them. It's just going to be significantly less. And then you get to open up and learn more skills because those foundational skills are still there. So I think the weapon mounted laser rangefinders, like a Vortex that just came out, a Raptor or whatever, ballistic laser rangefinders, all those things, ballistic apps, Kestrels are fantastic. I would have killed for them when I first started shooting. We have them now, and they're amazing. And not all of them talk to each other, but whatever. You can build the trifecta of awesomeness if you find the ones that do, and they definitely help. But don't become too reliant on them. Have them be a force multiplier, not a go no go criteria. If that makes any sense. Let's see what else we got. Drills to run at the range. Only goes 200 yards. Dude, I was talking to Brian Morgan from Hat Creek, and we were talking about like skill sustainment and what we would do to practice. And obviously Brian owns thousands of acres in Idaho, but we were talking about like we were getting ready for a match. Like I spot all the time, so spotting is not the thing. It's like trigger time, and so I need here in Oregon. I have to drive 3 hours until I find a freaking ranch close by to get any kind of distance. And I get distance when I teach, but like for my skill sustainment, the most I have is like 300 yards at the local range, 40 minutes away, and then maybe 500 or 600 if I go an hour north. And so you can do a lot at 100 yards on small targets. You can do stuff like tripods. You can shoot barricades. That's why I developed the ladder drill the way I did. Is the ability to test building positions quickly, getting off your belly, but at 100 yards, and that way you didn't need distance. And then the only thing you add with distance is that your data is tracking you, and you can call wind. And to practice calling wind, you need wind. But I tell people it's like you can do a lot of wind reading as far as like getting your miles an hour close just by carrying a Kestrel with you. And I kind of talk through it in classes being called like truing your wind call, which is like, when you're standing around at a park, stick your fingers up in the air and then go like, okay, what's this wind feel like? Make an educated guess based off of what you see around you, what it feels like, and then take your Kestrel out and then see what it really is. And then the more you do that, the better your wind reading is going to get. And you'll get to pick up like what foliage does at certain miles an hour, like, especially where you live. Like that's what matters, right? I tell people this in class. What the grass does here in Oregon in a valley that's surrounded by mountains is significantly different than what the grass does in Oklahoma. That's like, it sees sustained 35 mile an hour winds 70% of the year. Like that wind's been eating it. I mean, that grass has been eating its Wheaties, and this grass is, probably drives a Prius. So it's just kind of understanding that not all grass reacts the same. Not all trees react the same. So there's a lot you can do at 100 yards or a short distance. Let's see. Practice score count. Yep, do it. Start shooting matches. Do it right now. Pertinent info for your classes, like onboarding, if you will. I'm going to start when you guys enroll in classes. There's going to be some of the videos I've already done. I'm going to start recording more, not only for Patreon, but to share as people sign up. So they'll get like some pre-reading, quote unquote. So you'll get classes to watch that are basically a lot of the classes that we run through on the first half day of both scope carbine or precision rifle. And hopefully what it's way is not everybody's going to watch it, but it's a lot of information. The front of my classes are very information heavy, and it settles in throughout the 2 days, but we cover a lot. And so guys are the first day, like the review is always like, dude, that was a lot of information. I'm like, cool, calm down. Like we still have 1 day, so give me another day and then we'll talk about it. And by the end of the second day, they're like, putting it into practice makes it all come home. I'm like, weird. It's almost like it's designed that way. But if I can get guys the information early, then we can kind of have that sink in. And then guys, instead of having to like be the first time they heard it, they'll have already developed some questions and stuff that we can then cover in class. And so that's the plan. And so you guys on Patreon will get those, just like all the course emails. We'll get them. That's coming. Shooting positions. I'll have to do these on some of this stuff. I'll have to do on like an actual video, not just me sitting here on the porch. Drills to increase shot tempo. Speed is everything. Yeah, acceptable sight picture. Mental process for stage pistol carbine. That's pretty much it. Well, that's aside from some stuff that I have to go into a little more in depth because I can't really do positional on Discord server. What questions do you guys have for the 8 or 9 of you guys sitting here? I'm at your disposal. Nothing? Everybody's muted.
Can you run the dot? Check.
Can you run the dot what?
In the ladder drill.
Yeah, there's actually a modification. Honestly, Jimmy came up with the modification. I haven't ran it a whole bunch yet. It's 50 yards, and it's done with A zone, and so it'd still be the same as the carbine, which is 2 rounds. I haven't ran it, so that's why I put it with a big asterisk, because it may be really easy, it may be fucking impossible. 50 yards on an A zone doesn't seem impossible, but I do it significantly more with scope carbine and precision rifle than I do with a red dot. And so but Jimmy did a whole video on the Bruiser ladder standard that he did it. I'm pretty sure he did it on the video with a red dot, but I'll have to ask him what his times were looking like. But give it a go, man. It's I would do it unsupported because you're not going to be carrying a support bag with a red dot gun. But that's go ahead. What you see, pistol. I'll say this: becoming a sniper definitely played dividends into my pistol shooting as far as accuracy. It did not translate. For my first USPSA match, I went and I was like, I wanted all alphas, but I was slow as fuck, and so I had like triple the alphas of like anybody else, but I was like, I still finished like 50%, and so but the thing is that I think it does somewhat. I can see the translation happening with acceptable sight picture, understanding the different, confirmation levels that you need to obtain certain impacts. I think that's a really hard thing to explain to people when they're magnified. And so trying to tell somebody like, hey man, you don't need that reticle to stop moving when you have a 4 MOA target at 500 yards. Like, if you have a 20-inch wide target, like, dude, that reticle can be moving like a son of a bitch, and you're still going to impact. That's an enormous target. And so it's a significantly easier concept to drive home to a USPSA shooter because they're used to, different confirmation levels of your dot, right? Or your sights, or like, hey, if you have an E-type in your face, I'm going to let that motherfucker eat. But when you have a pepper popper at 27 yards or 35 yards, it's like, yeah, I need a little bit more sight confirmation. So trying to get people in scope carbine to go like, hey, if you're seeing what you need to see, like squeeze trigger. And I think getting guys to go from bolt. The nice thing is I see. Sorry, I got something stuck in my teeth. Um, most people I see in scope carbine these days are coming up from red dots. They're not coming down from from precision rifle. And so I think a lot of guys know how to run the guns fast, and it's getting those guys to understand that they need to get a good trigger squeeze and what they can get away with with a red dot at 15 yards, you can't get away with on a 2 MOA target at 600. And so that's why we talk about a lot about reactive doubles versus predictive. There's you see a lot of videos on Instagram of guys, they show the shooter, but then if you'll read the comments, you're like, oh yeah, we're shooting a 36-inch wide target at 400 yards. And I'm like, that's enormous. That's a school bus. Like, I'm not impressed by your telling guys to pull the trigger twice. So at my classes, we tend to shoot about 2 MOA targets. And so significantly tighter room for error. And so you're not going to be doing, 0.17 splits on a carbine on, an 8-inch target at 400 yards. So, yeah. Well, yeah. I think most people are target focused, even shooting irons anymore. I was just talking to Mason Lane, and he's been it used to be, obviously red dot guns are always target focused, but the with iron sights, it was always historically for a long time it was that front sight, and then you kind of getting to the point where you shoot enough where you realize how much you need to see, like what you need to see of that blur that is your sights to make the shots you need to. With an optic, especially a magnified optic, I'm jumping LPVOs for a moment and going something like a 3 to 15, 5 to 25, 4 to 27. You're both, because you should be bringing the picture and the reticle on the same plane, and so you should be able to see both. And the reason I say that is because everything is based off of you're using the reticle for your wind calls, and so you have to be able to see your reticle. You're not looking past it. It's the information, and it's also what gives you, if you miss, how far you missed by, and you're looking through your reticle to then identify where that impact was, and then put that spot on the target. And so, jumping back to LPVOs, because the thing is, with a higher magnification optic, you have side focus, you have parallax adjustment. With an LPVO, you don't, and so you can find yourself where you're kind of dancing between the reticle and the target, and your eyes have to work a lot more with an LPVO, and it depends how see. If the target's huge and you can just go like, yep, I'm by the 3, my hold is 3 mils, I can squeeze. Or it's like, hey, all of a sudden that target's really small, I really need to, and maybe that target gets a little blurry because I have to see that I need to do a 0.3 wind call right now, or a 0.7, and then all of a sudden you make that call, the shot breaks, and your eyes go screaming back to the target because you have to see where the splash is. So it's kind of both, and it really depends, because that's what you're gaining is the reticle, and so the biggest advantage you're getting over a red dot gun like a PCC or a carry optics or limb optics or any of that stuff is the reticle. And so, unlike a dot where all you're doing is seeing color, and there's no parallax, you're not trying to bring the image on the same plane. Like, it doesn't matter. You're just putting the dot where you want it. Well, now that dot has like a ruler and it has all these subtensions that you have to see, because that's what you're using to then shoot that target. Yeah, but I think it's different in that you're putting them on the same plane. Like you should be adjusting your parallax. I'm not saying you always have to, because when targets get far enough out there, the range that your optic can see clearly is actually fairly substantial. But and the difference is when guys are staring at their dots, they tend to stare at their dots even under recoil. Like you're not staring at your reticle under recoil. And so it's the second that shot breaks, that reticle moves, because you have to think about the amount of movement that's happening inside that gun with how much you're magnified in. And so that reticle's gone, and then all of a sudden returns, hopefully in pretty close to the same spot if you have a good natural point of aim. And then you're trying to watch for where that splash is. And then, you throw that reticle back up in what your last hold was, look where the splash is, put that where that hold is in your reticle back in the middle of the target, and pull the trigger. And so, or you go, hey, I'm a half mil low, half mil right, and you add that left and high, and go forth and do gun things. But it's definitely not the same aiming process as a dot. Yeah, for sure. Anybody else? Homeboy, you were checking your microphone. You got something? Oh, yeah, send it. Oh, he's trying to buy ammo for that class in May. For the classes, I tell people, if you buy the cheapest ammo that your gun likes, I mean, and some guys hand load, and more power to you. But like, do you need ridiculously expensive ammo to accomplish the given tasks of what I teach? No, I literally buy whatever the cheapest IMI 175 Sierra Match King I can find is, or I think I just finished up a bunch of Spark tipped 175s I bought during COVID, and as long as your gun likes it and it's fairly consistent, like you're going to be able to do what we're trying to accomplish. You don't need to go buy, match ammo that's like 230 or 170, 169 grain A tips, that are $3 a round. It's just not needed. So if you're, and hopefully when you leave the class, you should feel confident enough to then go forth, build another profile with new ammo at your local range, and get all the same information that we did. You shouldn't leave a class going like, nobody touched my Kestrel because I don't know how I got it to where it is right now, and it was hitting when I was there. Like, nah, I didn't do my job. If you're intimidated to build another profile, so you should leave with the skills to do that as many times as you want. I I get off the trigger with a scope carbine. You're not helping yourself by pinning the trigger on a scope carbine, because I mean it's the exact same thing with a pistol, right? Are you seeing anything like as that gun's moving? So if that gun's moving already, like with a precision rifle, like a bolt action, to make that gun function, you have to operate the bolt manually. With a gas gun, you don't. And so you should be able to go and get back to reset while that gun's recoiling. And so, no, do not pin the trigger on a scope carbine. I'm not a fan. I mean, that you're never gonna be ready for another follow up shot if you're riding the reset and going click. With a bolt action, it's different. With a bolt action, there's nothing you can do. There's no reset to be had until you manually operate the bolt. And if you start manually operating the bolt, you're going to miss the information you need downrange. And so I think reactive and predictive doubles are very much a thing with semi-autos. With bolt action guns, the only thing doubles can give you is if you're close enough and the targets are big enough that you know you're not going to miss, or you just saw your correction and that so your next shot is an educated shot and you want to put one right after another just so in case they move or something or it moves, the deer you're shooting at. I think it's one of those things where then I might make correction, send one, roll bolt, send another, just so I can get 2 rounds in the air with a educated guess or with a educated correction. It's not a guess because it's very calculated. But no, do not pin the trigger up to the back with a gas gun. That's absolutely not. What else we got? I'm trying to find where you saw those. Were those? Oh, okay. I thought I took pictures of all those. Evidently not.
I got one for you, Joe.
Send it.
Well, with the popularity of scope carbine and precision rifle gaining in the States these days, and the primary question is, hey, what's the best rifle? And I hate the term "what's the best" because I think it takes all options out. What are your recommendations for scope carbine as a system, and then bolt gun as a system, and then a follow on for that would be optic choice for both, and if it can be cross pollinated?
Ooh, that's a really deep question. Okay, topics to cover. Is that the one, or it was the Q&A. You said you were reading. There it is. Okay, I'll go back to that in a sec. Okay. I tell people so the way I talk through rifle setup is how big of a bullet do you want to shoot? How far do you want it to go? And what do you want it to do when it gets there? And then once you identify that, then you can work backwards. The follow-on question to that is, what's your training budget? And because a rifle you don't train with is useless. Like, you're not going to understand the system. You're not going to get something out of it. You're not going to want to train if every bullet you have to shoot through it, and your training budget for the month is $150 or $200 for ammo. And it's like, well, a 6 ARC is $1.70 a round. 5.56, AAC 77 grain is like 55 cents a round. It's like 70 to 90 cents a round for IMI. So it's like, so I can shoot twice as much, if not 3 times as much, with one versus the other. And so, can I shoot 100 rounds a month, or can I shoot 300 rounds a month? And so, those things really do come into play. And then there's things like barrel life. Do you have the 6.5 Creedmoor might get 1,900 to 2,700 rounds of barrel life. Like a 308 might get 7,000 to 10,000 rounds of barrel life. And so if you're only shooting out to 500 or 600, 700 maybe, or you're just kind of trying to learn and build your skill set and get better at calling wind, that 308 is going to make you work harder than a 6.5 Creedmoor, a 6 Creed, and it's going to have more barrel life. It's going to make you be a better shooter. So this logic goes into whether it's gas gun, bolt gun, etc. It's like, I can build a 20-inch 308 or I can build a 16-inch 308, bolt or gas. And are either of them wrong? No. You have to give me your list of what you're trying to accomplish with it. And so the scope carbine, the thing is like, are you a red dot shooter who's just looking to extend distance and gain a little bit more, but still you run it like a carbine? Or are you trying to gain as much distance as I can get out of the platform? And because the thing is, you pick up like a 1 to 10 is not putting a 3 to 18. There's less weight. There's less size. So how much do you want to jump up? A 18-inch gun with a suppressor is significantly less handy than a 14.5 with a suppressor. So if you're, and we shoot 12.5s and 14.5s to 1,000 all the time. And so, is it the most efficient way to get there? Fuck no. Can it? Yes. So what is your purpose with that rifle? And once you identify that, it's like, well, I already have a red dot gun. Okay. And I really want to see what I can get out of 77 grains. Like, I want to shoot as far as I can. Okay, then cool. We're doing a DMR. And so we're going to do a 17, 18, 5, whatever. And it's like, and we're probably going to do like a 4 to 16, 2 to 10, 3 to 18, 4 to 20 level scope. But does that mean that my 13.9 with a 1 to 10 is the wrong setup? No, it's for different use. Bolt gun, the same way. It's like, guys like to play with those what ifs. It's like, well, I want to shoot 1,000 yards. I'm like, dude, I shoot 1,200 yards with a 223 bolt gun all the time. Well, okay, how much? What do you want to shoot that for? Do you want to not hold off plate? Like, do you want to shoot a 338 Remington Ultra Mag? Like, I mean, you're going to be sending $7 a pill down range. So it's I get those arguments. It's like, well, what about this? What about 6 Arc? What about 6.5 Creed? What about a 300 Win Mag Nemo? It's like, well, what about it? What are you trying to accomplish? Each individual has to sit down and identify their needs. I mean, there is no absolute. There's like the thought process has to be, okay, this is what I have already. This is the capability I'm trying to gain. Is it max distance? Like, am I going bolt gun territory where I want to get a 338 Lapua or 300 Norma? Is it like, I'm really familiar with gas guns, but I want to shoot farther than what an AR-15 will give me, and so I'm looking at an AR-10, and within an AR-10, like, I don't really need it to be a battle rifle, and I'm really looking to see kind of 300 Win Mag style ballistics. Okay, then you're probably in the 6.5 Creed realm. And then once you make those decisions, then it's start car shopping, man. Going and looking at what guns are out there. This is where you were finding them all. See, I'm an idiot. You guys have to forgive me. Like, I started a Patreon a week and a half ago. I'm figuring it out, trying to make it worth your guys' time. Let's see. What type of job would you allow you to get paid to shoot? Ooh. Well, this one. But go on Instagram. Look how saturated this market is. The life of a firearms instructor is not as glamorous as some make it out to be. And if you think it's all about like free guns and free ammo and free everything, you're going to be as disappointed as almost every soft guy who gets in the industry who thinks, ominous dominus, you are now a industry god. It's just not the case. And really, I am Tactical Guru X, dude, our market's saturated. There's thousands of guys like every one of us. And so what makes you different? Is it because are you like more of a gunsmith? Are you a ballistics guy? Are you continuing to train? Like, what are you continuing to do to be better? Or are you just hanging your hat on a deployment that happened 12 years ago? But you do get paid to shoot, but I also pay a lot of money to shoot. And I'm also retired once. So I also have other income coming in. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. Do you have any tips and tricks to control breathing to minimize heartbeat pulses into scope carbine? Oh, deep breaths, man. I tell people all the time that if you're running up to a barricade, like, you have to do a movement stage, or, you just climbed a mountain and all of a sudden, dude, I have to take a shot. Dude, taking the time to take 2 or 3 deep breaths, not like, yoga breaths, but like, you will reduce your beats per minute significantly. You're about to see a dog get in this picture. Significantly from where you were. And the thing is that you're not going to miss 17 times because you didn't. So, deep breaths. Precision rifle doubles. Yep, you read that one. Let me see. Wind without a spotter. Yeah, I mean, you just got to learn how to read wind. So that's from John. So, understanding wind. We cover this in class on quick wind. I'll put up the applied ballistics on what that is. And basically, it's figuring out how you're basically going to figure out an equation that's going to give you a tenth of wind for how many miles an hour it takes to give you a tenth of wind for every 100 yards. So 0.1 at 100, 0.5 at 500, 0.7 at 700. So there's an equation that you use, or a mathematical pattern you're looking for, that's going to be a certain mile an hour. And so that you can figure out, the more you do it, it becomes easier. And then, so if you figure out you're a 5 gun, that means that every 5 miles an hour of wind. So if you have 15 miles an hour, then it's 3 times the distance in wind. So if the distance is 650, that's 0.65. So 0.65 times 3 would be like 2 mils. So my starting win call, full value, would be a 2 mil win call, and then you just take the cosine or the percentage off of that based off of the direction of the wind. But it just takes time and understanding those equations, which I didn't develop. So I'll share you guys the link to the accuracy first videos on it. But let's see, bipods, Arca rails. Are there other reasons to adjust the tripod closer? Barricades, push versus pull. If you can create where, like, instead of, what happens is the farther you put the contact points out, the more you're going to end up when you're trying to get pressure on the front of the gun to mitigate like muzzle rise or movement induced by the shooter. The more you push, you're going to cant your body, and the more you cant your body, the more that your follow through and recoil management goes to shit. And so the gun's going to want to return back to being in line with your body. And so you want to really try to keep your body perpendicular to the bore line. And so what you can do is you can move the bipod back, and it'll give you the ability to get to hook into or push into a barricade. And it doesn't push the barricade too far out, but you don't necessarily have to pull it all the way up against the mag well, where you're having to really reach out there and control muzzle rise so far down the rail. And so things like shooting off tops of barrels, walls, hoods of cars, mailboxes, whatever, it can help that too. You can create contact point that's closer to your grip, so you can try to get under your hand. Basically, put your hand underneath on a support, and you can cant your hand to do that up and down elevation gain, and without even using a bag. Same thing you do with a bag. You get the bag underneath, the buttstock, and you're going to squeeze it to change elevation. If you have a short surface, you can pull that bipod back, and now you have front point of contact. You might not be able to get to the buttstock, but you can get to the grip, or you can get to the mag. And with that, you can just put your hand underneath it, and you can add another point of contact that can help with that elevation gain or loss. So it helps. Now, Arca rail also does a couple other things. Arca rail also allows for a wider contact patch. So, on a thin rail, like an M-Lock rail, whether it's Daniel Defense, BCM, whatever, think about how big your contact patch is. If you throw that rail up on a barricade, first of all, unless you're perfectly flat on the barricade, you're not going to get that contact. So you're hinging. And if you hinge and it's round, your contact patch is going to be like a motorcycle tire on the road. You're only going to have a super small contact patch. And with Arca rail, you gain this, it widens that out significantly, and especially when putting it on a bag. You throw a bag underneath Arca rail and it just wants to sit because you have this big flat surface as opposed to a rounded one. And so there's a lot of benefits to it. But if you're a running gun style shooter, it's not fun to grab a forend to, like, if you're a PCC shooter or, carbine shooter, grabbing Arca rail, it's fucking thick. And so you're getting a significantly thicker handguard because of the Arca rail. And so on my SPRs, I do full length. Like, I have a 17, 18, and two 18.5s, and my AR-10s all have full Arca. My 16-inch AR-10 or my 13.9s, 14.5s, 16-inch guns, I put a little piece of Arca in the back. Typically, that's where I'm going to put my bag anyways, if I'm going to throw it up on a barricade. So I get a little bit of contact patch, but when I grab the forend, I still get a really thin forend, which is what I like for shooting quickly, like, more practical style shooting, as opposed to trying to do it with a full-length Arca. So, yeah, bipods, Arca's really key, and it's getting a lot better too because they're putting all the little divots in it, which makes so you can actually lock instead of just tension. So you're kind of getting the same rigidity as like a pick rail, where it has a physical stop forward and back, and so your bipod doesn't loosen up and then slide all the way down your rail. Different muzzle devices, higher price, not always. No, 90% of muzzle devices, dude, there's some really hard to machine ones people sell for really cheap. And then there's stuff like Knight's Armament that is, they make out of materials that you really don't need, and they charge 3 times anybody else for it. No, not worth it. Oh, choosing suppressors and optics you haven't used before. Those are 2 very different things. What do I use to choose for suppressors? I mean, dude, before you were kind of at the whim of either word of mouth or somebody else doing a review. I think it's kind of nice now that we're seeing places like Pew Science doing third party reviews. Take it for what it is. If people want to shit talk what he's doing, I think it's great for the industry. I think it makes everybody really worry about how actually quiet their cans are, and that if Jay gets a hold of your can, that it's not going to shit the bed when you've been saying it's the quietest can ever. Do you want QD or direct thread? And I think that what's nice now is I think cans are getting so modular that almost every can on the market has removable end caps, and so you can change to either, which is nice. How quiet you want to be and what kind of technology do you need flow through or do you not? Flow through has a lot of benefits, but it also creates a lot of places for carbon to get stuck and other things. So I think flow through is kind of the way to go, honestly, for gas guns. I think it just eliminates a lot of the problems with running gas guns suppressed. With bolt guns, I think it's kind of 6 in one, half dozen the other. I don't think they're as quiet, although there's some pretty quiet flow through cans now. Like my KGMs are semi flow through, and those things are really quiet. So that's suppressor wise. And then, like I said, how long do you want it? You're going to make sacrifices usually when you get shorter. Some shorter cans do really, really well. Some don't. It's kind of a deep waters to wade into, and then kind of hope you get a year later after you buy it, when you actually get to pick your can up, that it's what you were hoping for, or your needs haven't changed. That's why I have 14 cans pending. On optics, I tell people that's really hard. Number one, make sure the reticle is something you like and can use. I mean, that's one of the biggest things. Glass clarity is absolutely important, but dude, for me, it's the reticle. I want to make sure the reticle is what I want. And then I watch a lot of people get really cheap with glass. I don't understand why, but you really have to figure out what your budget is, and then probably expect to double it. Because if you just bought a $2,500 gun, like, don't go looking for a $500 optic. I'd rather see somebody with $1,000 gun and a $3,000 optic than a $5,000 gun and a $500 optic. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just, glass is where you make your money, period. I mean, Eric just walked in here. Eric spends more time on glass than almost anybody I know. Let's see. Talking about biathlons. Oh, somebody asked about shooting moving targets, lead or follow. I don't know about following targets. I don't know how that works for you, but it's more about track or trap. Track and trap is tracking targets, means targets moving, and you are trying to keep the reticle with your lead and the wind call, either way, at the same pace. Trapping is you move, the target's moving, and you're going to put your reticle and wait for the target to get where you need it to be, and then pull the trigger. And so some people prefer one, some people prefer the other. I kind of do a trapping track, which is I jump ahead of it. Oh, sorry, my butt's going to sleep. All right. I kind of jump ahead of the target, but I move at a slower speed than the target. And what it does is instead of having like where you track where you want the gun to go off absolutely right now, it kind of elongates that exposure time where I'm closer, and it's not some lengthy process. I literally jump ahead of it. I slow down so I can get it where I want it, and then whack, and I jump ahead of it, slow down, whack. And so it's not a like way ahead, slow moving, wait for it to get there. Like I jump, a quarter to a half a mil ahead of what my lead probably is, and then make my fine adjustments, slow down, and pull the trigger. 22 precision rifle. I think 22 is one of the most underutilized resources you got. Like I said, I can do a lot of work at 100 yards, and like even there's ranges now that can hold practical shooting style matches in 22. Where, dude, reading wind on a 22 at 250 yards will teach you some wind reading. So I think setting yourself up an expensive 22 or a nice 22, a CZ or a Bergara, or any of them, and go train 22. That is absolutely a resource. Let's see. What action would you put in an AX long action chassis? There's a lot of good actions right now. I'm still a fan of Bighorn, made by Zermatt. The Bighorn actions are great. They got movable, exchangeable bolt heads. I really like my Defiance actions. I've got a bunch of them. The Mac Brothers actions are great. I've heard mixed reviews lately about Curtis and Impact, both ways. American Rifle Company, I think, are really making some nice actions. They are really complex. I think sometimes overly complex, but the dude's kind of a mad genius. So what do you expect? Surgeon used to be the big deal, and I haven't heard much from them lately. I honestly, they don't really interest me much. Trying to think who else. Long action. I know there's more, but that'll get you started. Yeah, Zermatt. Look at Zermatt and Defiance, and yeah, that should give you a good start. Let me see. Oh, yeah. So I shot about 100 rounds through it yesterday. It's a 3-lug. I just cleaned it this morning. It's kind of a rounded 3-lug. It's kind of an interesting design. They did not just like make another Remington 700 clone, which is kind of refreshing. I've got a couple complaints about they rushed and didn't put the folding mechanism in. And so supposedly they are coming out with one. It's literally a inch-long extension that they're planning to replace, because you can see it. Like they thought ahead, they just didn't design it yet, and so they released the Solus, and then with the expectation that you're going to be able to remove that section and then put in a folding mechanism. I went to go clean it this morning, and it's like near impossible to take the cheek piece off. But then if you don't take the cheek piece off, then your bore guide rides on the cheek piece, and it's kind of canted. Anyways, small frustrations. I was like, you guys didn't think guys were going to clean your guns? It shot well. I'm kind of doing two things at once. I'm shooting brass solids in a new gun, and so there was some break-in going on. So I didn't bring a chrono. I knew I was going to be breaking a gun in. I kind of just went and shot groups and did some positional stuff, knowing that I need to get 100, 150 rounds through it before it stabilized anyways. So probably going to hit the range either tomorrow or Monday to kind of wrap up another 50 to 100 rounds on it. And I am going to bring my lab radar and try to see if I can get some good groups for pictures out of it. But I'm shooting the G9 114 solids, like the super match. Dude, it's like 115 brass turn solids at like 3,050 feet per second out of a 6.5 Creedmoor. It's like shooting a 6 Creedmoor like on steroids. It's like, anyways, very super interesting. But that's what G9 sent, or Eclipse Armory sent me some G9 to try out, and they said that the gun, those bullets don't like copper jackets or copper fouling. They like it when the barrel's clean. And so I was like, well, I have a brand new gun that has 0 rounds on it, so I'll shoot it in that. So 3-lug, bolt feels good. I'm just saying that because it hasn't been broken in at all. It felt a lot better today after I cleaned it and put a little bit of grease on the lugs. So I think after this next 50 to 100 rounds, it'll probably clean up a little more. The trigger that comes factory in it is a Trigger Tech, so it's got a decent trigger in it. The barrel seems to shoot well. I think they're definitely making a run at the Seekins. I don't know if they're there yet. I think the Seekins offers you a switch barrel and a folder for the same money, but that's retail, because I think I just saw the other day that they're selling the Arrow on, I don't remember if it was Brownells or whatever, where you get the Arrow and a suppressor for like $1,600. Like that's a hell of a price point. So I'm not disappointed in the gun. I think the chassis is solid, the trigger is good, it seems to shoot well. the Arrow did a good job machining it. My sample size is 1 and it's 100 rounds. So I don't want to be like, this is the best deal running. I've shot probably close to 1,000 rounds through Seekins hits, and they're a hell of a lot of gun too. And I know that Arrow, cause it's a changeable bolt face, and so the Arrow, I heard they're coming out with the 6.5 PRC, the Magnum bolt face for the short action, and they're coming out with the folder. So if they do that, then the only thing you're missing that the Seekins has is the switch barrel, as far as like one screw unscrew type switch barrel. And I know that Arrow is coming out with an enclosed forend. So they make that little night vision bridge, but they're making one that's going to go the entire length of the screw holes they have in the top of that chassis. So I think they're going to have a pretty modular system, and I definitely like that it exists. It's but yeah, more to follow. I mean, I'm wary to speak too in depth on a gun that I have 100 rounds on, but initial impressions are positive. Let's see what else we got here.
If somebody does want to get a 6.5 Creedmoor or a 6.5 PRC, that bolt face is out. It came out, I think, a couple weeks ago. It's on their site right now.
Oh, nice. DMR type setup are more applicable to civilians than... Ooh, this is based off of Lucas's post. Okay, so DMR is more applicable than SBRs and CQB classes. Okay, and then he has a part 2. Ooh, this is a good one. So this goes, and he asked about night vision. I view night vision, and bear with me because this lends into the gun choice. I view night vision as an offensive tool. You have to be able to control the environment because night vision is easily defeated, and night vision is made for working with other people with night vision. And so if you are, home alone or with your wife and your kids, and you are responding to a break-in, you're breaking contact, your third world or whatever, World War III scenario that you have planned up in your head is, the man is coming up your driveway, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, and you're breaking contact, or are you going to go like one man Rambo, like out into the woods? Do you have is your fire team the 4 guys who live around you, or are you going to grab your wife and kids who don't have night vision and then throw your nods down and lead them in the dark through the woods? Like, so I think if your intent is to protect yourself and your family and create distance from people and leave the area, I want to keep them as far away as possible. And so if I have the ability to put effective rounds on target, at the farther away I can do that, the farther I can keep them away, which means the safer I inherently am. Because if somebody is in my living room, then it's who can get deadly rounds off faster. So do I think that CQB is not relevant? No. Do I think that SBRs and night vision and whatever are things that we shouldn't own? No, I think you should be able to own whatever the fuck you want. I think people put entirely too much focus, time, and money and effort into being kitted enough to do a direct action raid that they will never take part in, versus having some basic awareness of skill sets that will be beneficial to clearing your own house, understanding angles, doing basic footwork, shooting and moving in close proximity, while then also maintaining the ability to create distance, keep people at bay, and do it from really far away. And so I think it's not that it's one versus the other. I think it's percentage of time spent on one right now, given that it's the sexy, fast thing to post on Instagram, is weighted way heavier one side where it shouldn't be, versus the other. I mean, dude, I like being in a kill house too. I'm a CQB RSO. I was a team lead. Like, dude, I love house runs. But dude, house runs is for like, having 4 to 6 to 8 guys and going through. I don't live next to 4 to 6 to 8 guys, much less guys that I do like regular CQB training with. But I'll keep some people significantly farther away than they probably want to be with just me and a rifle. So I don't know. That's some things to think about. Let's see. Yeah, we already did the reading wind. Thoughts on Tacoma prisms? I think they're a useful tool for red dots. I'm going to do a whole video on this instead of just answering on this question, because it'll take me about an hour to get through it, which is, there's a lot of people who really like BD, like battle site zeros. I see them as super limited application. I see it as the lowest common denominator training tool. And I think prisms then just make it so that you can have 2 BZOs that you can flip between on giant targets, which again, there's a whole discussion of, once you fire one round, your targets tend to get really small really quickly. So you're not shooting a 40-inch target to 600 yards. You might be able to get one 40-inch target, and then all those targets become heads, shoulders, half of the body behind a lot of different things, cars, edges of buildings, lampposts, whatever. And it's like, well, I don't have 40 inches to hold. So now your BZO is just sending rounds high or low. So again, I think it's a useful tool for maybe a red dot magnifier. I'm not to just strap more shit onto my gun to say it's the future of warfare. I'm going to do a prism and a thermal and I think it's just for Instagram. When would you favor the use of a tripod in different shooting positions versus a bag? How much time you have. I'm not running around a field with an extended tripod. Like, I'm not running around like with a gun in one hand and a tripod in the other. Like, that's why when we come to scope carbine classes, I talk about it as like escalating levels of support. We shoot everything with rifle and sling, like no bag, no nothing. And then I go, okay, now you have enough time. Now I'm going to give you a bag. Okay, you have a little more time. Now I'm going to give you a bag and a backpack. And it's like, okay, now you're fucking damn near stationary. I'll teach you tripod rear support. But extending a tripod makes something you either have to leave if shit goes bad, or you have to run with this 6 foot long, monstrosity. And it just adds a whole different level of complication. So I want to be able to do as much as I can with as little as I can. Suppressor covers. There's definitely positives and negatives to suppressor covers. Positive is it cuts down a mirage. And so you see, you don't get the mirage in your optic. The other side of that, though, is that you are holding in heat. You're not letting heat vent. And so the suppressor is going to get hotter and hotter, which is, heat cycles on metal or what is metal, what will kill it. And so I think there is benefits to it, and it keeps you from burning your leg if you do transitions with a hot can. You're doing house runs. So I think I almost never run one when I'm teaching class or doing precision rifle, because it's usually windy. We're in an open area. My rifle's going to cool. I'm doing 8 to 10 round strings, and then my gun's sitting for a second. It's going to cool down anyways. If I was doing like CQB classes or like really running and gunning on the range a lot, and I was doing a lot of transitions and stuff, just to keep from doing 2nd or 3rd degree burns, I would absolutely throw a suppressor cover on. If I was, doing Overwatch in real world, and would I have a suppressor cover on to keep, if I really got into a point where I was really having to get on a 6.5 Creedmoor gas gun heavy, would I want to keep that mirage down? Yes. At the sacrifice of maybe some longevity on the can? Yes. So I think if you don't have to use it, don't. Like, if you are in this type of environment where your shooting tempo is going to be lower, then take your suppressor cover off. It's just going to help you lengthen the life cycle of the can. If you're doing some things where it can benefit you, whether it's a match, maybe you are law enforcement, military, whatever, or you are doing a class where the round count is higher, the tempo's higher, and you don't want to burn yourself, you want to cut down a mirage, whatever, throw it back on. I think it's a good tool for the toolbox. Is it a do it all the time thing for me? No. So that's suppressor covers. I think that's, I just got to the end. Yeah, send it. Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to like where you live, what your accessibility is. Like if there's a local PRS match or like a local rimfire match that you want to participate in, and that gets you the ability, like for me, the closest PRS match is 3 hours away. Like sort of for me to shoot a real long distance PRS match, dude, like I either have to wake up at like 3 a.m. to get over there, or I have to drive over the night before, get a hotel. But 40 minutes away, they do a monthly rimfire match, which is absolutely like training value added locally. I have a 223 bolt gun. So if I shot a lot of 223 or already had it, or I was already reloading 77 for like an SPR, and I didn't want to, and my other bolt gun's like a 6.5 Creedmoor or a 6 Creed, and I don't want to just 70 cents or 50 cents reloading is significantly better than shooting 109 burgers or 110 A tips or something. Then maybe the 223 is a benefit gained, and you get a little closer to the same recoil. You have the same bolt feel. Like for me, like the Seekins now, you can get a 223 conversion for it, so it's the same damn gun, like same scope, same chassis, same everything, and so like that's definitely beneficial. I think, and it also allows you to save. Like if you have a match gun, the 223 and 308s allow you if you have a match gun. Like for me, trying to get into my new NRL and PRS gun is going to be like an AI ATX that uses the same barrels as my 6.5 or my 308 AX. And so if I run that in 308, I can train for cheaper ammo, longer barrel life, and then just unscrew it, screw in my 6 Creed or my 6.5 Creed barrel and go shoot a match. And I have the same trigger feel, same action feel, same reticle, like it's the same gun. And so the familiarity is there. And there's definitely something to be said about that. So I'm sorry I don't have an exact question for you, because I think it kind of really depends on your situation. And 5.56 and 308 have very similar barrel lives. They're both like 10,000 round plus. So those are very similar. It really comes down to what you already shoot a lot. Like if you have a bunch of 5.56 guns and you already have 5.56, my 223 bolt gun shoots 55 grain ball ammo, like right at MOA. So I can shoot really cheap ammo and get a lot of training value without even shooting match ammo. Especially if I'm giving myself target sizes that are, 2 MOA, 3 MOA, whatever. Or if I'm shooting barricades or tripod or whatever, the ladder drill. It's like, well, I've got a 3x5 MOA target. 1 MOA will get me there. So I can shoot that 3 times as much almost shooting ball as shooting, some Black Hills or whatever. But 22 at the end is still 22. So I mean, it's not going to recoil nearly as much, but it'll absolutely give you some wind reading practice. Whereas 100, 200, 300, like you're not going to get a whole lot of wind reading practice with 308 or 5.56. Oh, I uh Lapua, um, the Lapua 22 match is Eric. What are you seeing at the NRL matches? Have you RO'd any of those? I thought Norma has some. What's some of the really fancy 22 ammo? I know Lapua. Everybody buys that shit up when it's available. Yeah, I know. I mean, you can find cheaper stuff. I mean, what you run at a match can always be different than what you run for practice too. But Mile High, I know, has stocks a bunch of this match 22 fairly regularly. So they usually have a pretty good stockpile of match 22. I'm not saying they're the only place to go. I'm just saying I happen to know that I get all their email mailers on 22 match ammo. I'm building a Rimex through them. So I should have a new 22 match gun here shortly. But yeah, dude, 22 is, dude, a suppressed 22, like, go on a range that has 300 yards with little tiny targets. You're gonna have it's one of the most fun matches you're ever gonna shoot. Well, I mean, you don't have to go shoot some, voodoo or something either. Like, I think CZ makes multiple options that are super reasonable, and so does Bergara. And I think the Bergara ones take the same. They're like voodoo copies, like they're actual. It's the same profile as a AICS magazine, so it's got a regular bottom metal. And so if you took your Bergara action out, you could put it into like a Manor stock or something, and still use their magazines. So I don't think they're that expensive at all. Like, I forgot. Fucking Taylor just went and bought one when we were talking on the phone like 2 weeks ago, but I forget how much they are. But I mean, dude, the Voodoos are nice. The Rimex are nice. I mean, there's some really nice options that you could. I mean, you can have a 22 that costs as much as anybody's 6.5 Creedmoor. It's when you start going and shooting those matches, you're going to see some dudes who have some really expensive 22s, like, dude, like ZCO in a AX chassis with a Rimex with a Bartland barrel with a like MDT double pull. You're like, dude, that's an $8,000 22. But dudes get into that stuff. I mean, some people buy golf clubs, some people buy guns. I mean, I think guns are more practical personally. But anything else, guys? Hopefully,
I had one.
Go ahead.
Being a newer scoped carbine shooter, coming from Red Dots, having a little bit of difficulty sort of getting adjusted to where I should be setting my focus and at what magnification. Should you be looking on something like a 1-8 attacker that by 4x you should be able to read all the different stadia lines, mills, or is that something more reserved for the higher magnification only?
No, so the process I tell people is what I do is lay down behind the gun and turn the ocular focus, the ocular adjustment. So on the Night Force, loosen that ring and turn the entire back until you get as close to at 1 power. You have as close to a true 1 power as you can get. And so this is like the bulk adjustment part. And so turn it until you have both eyes open and you're looking through the optic and it looks like you're looking through a red dot. Like there's no prescription applied. Then crank that sucker to 8 power. And then what you're going to do is then I fine tune the same way I do with all my other optics. So at 100 yards or whatever distance you can get, I'm going to try to adjust it so the reticle is clear. It should be pretty clear if you have 1 power, just because that's how your eyes are seeing. You should be pretty close, but fine tune it so you can see all the stadia lines, especially the fine ones. And then what I do is I want to be able to bag the back of the gun, lift my head off the cheek, and move my head up, down, left, and right, and make it so that reticle moves as little as humanly possible. Like some of you guys, you're not going to be able to take it all out because you can't put the reticle on the same plane as the what's it called, the target. And so some of you guys there's going to be a little bit of movement, but what happens is if you try to take as much of it out as possible. So if I take my head off and I go like this, that dot shouldn't move on the target, because if the gun's not moving but the reticle is, you're inducing parallax. And so that means that every time you mount the gun, if you're not in the same spot every time, that you're inducing a parallax issue. And so I do because Mark Smith does the 1 power method. And so I use that as kind of like the bulk adjustment, like get that as close as you can, but you're you're going to fine tune at 8 power because otherwise you're on smaller targets, you're going to induce stuff that you don't know if it's your dope. You don't know if it's your wind call. You don't know if it's your shooting. You don't know if it's the gun. Like, you don't know if it's the optic because you're putting your cheek in a different fucking spot. The other thing is just really make sure that you have your length of pull right before you mount that scope. The number one issue I see with weapon setup is somebody who took a red dot class, that instructor said, hey, everybody needs to run their stock at, all the way out, one click in. It's like, no, you don't. You need to set your length of pull. And then once you set your length of pull, then you put the optic on. And that, because it plays into so many more things than, especially shooting precision rifle or scope carbine, than just like fitting around body armor or whatever that X operator thinks he's telling you guys to do it for. Length of pull is really important, and it should be the first thing you do before you put the scope on. And then set ocular adjustment and all that stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Cool.
So I had something real quick along those same lines.
Yeah.
I followed on Instagram how you talk about like the optic height and your zero and how it affects drop, especially with the red dots. But along what we were just talking about when it comes to the precision guns, does the scope height, because like I grew up hunting and they said, hey, scope lowest on the rifle as humanly possible is the best way to do it. But as I start shooting more, I found that with my bucket of a head that the scope sitting a little bit higher is a little bit more comfortable. So should I still try to get it as low as possible, or is a scope like 2.5 inches above bore okay, or 3 inches or anything like that?
That's 100% okay. It definitely matters the closer zeros significantly more than the farther. And you have to think about is you're converging 2 points. And so the farther out I push, so let's say this is optic height, and then this is my convergence. So the closer and I bring this, the more extreme this angle gets. And considering the bottom one of this equation is actually an arc and not a straight line, that the closer I bring that point in, the more I elevate the barrel, because I'm dialing the optic down, right, to converge to 2 points. You can't adjust the barrel, you adjust the optic. And so you're elevating the barrel, that's creating a higher max ord past the convergence point. That's what you do when you dial for 700 yards, is you're actually dialing the reticle down, which is bringing that, you have a close zero and a far zero, or you have a close convergence and a far convergence, the far convergence being your intended distance, 700, 500, 1,000, whatever. The reason why we zero at 100 is it's the closest distance that you actually have almost no max ord. Like the bullet basically pauses at between like 89 or 91 yards and like almost 108. It basically is within a tenth of your intended point of impact. Like the bullet doesn't go to 100 yards. Like you ever watch somebody trying to zero and they go like, they're lazing the back of their buddy and they're trying to go like, hey, you're at 99, take one step forward. You're at 101, take one step back. It's like, shut the fuck up. Put the target down. We do 100 because that's where it's far enough out that bullet converges and kind of stays there for a sec before going down. As we get closer, any closer than 100, what starts to happen is that angle starts to elevate too much and you start having the bullet pass over your point of aim and you create max ord. And so you're going to have a hold under, not just a hold over. And so 100 yard zero creates it where all of your holds, if you are on zero, are all hold overs, which means that your reticle is being held over the target instead of the reticle being held under, created by max ord problems. With red dots, that's why we usually use closer zeros. And so the higher the optic height, because that zero is so much closer, it creates this max ord problem. And so those guys who were like 25 yard zero, 25 yard zero, 25 yard zero, that's all you'll ever need. It's like, well, if you're running like my MCX with a Unity, if I ran a 25 yard zero, I have an 18-inch max ord at like 180 yards. So at 180 yards from where I'm aiming, the bullet's actually 18 inches high because I have a 4-inch optic height. I've pulled that zero into 25, which then made that arc go where my max ord is now 18 inches over my point of aim. So I run on a 4-inch optic height on an MCX, I run 100 yard zero. So like I said earlier, I only end up with I'm within a tenth, or I'm within the dot to 200 yards. It's an 11.5-inch gun. That means, aside from having to deal with a little bit of mechanical offset between 0 and 100, which is 4 inches, I don't have to worry about 18 inches at 200. I have like 2. And then at 300, I have 9. So from 0 to 300, I'm within 9 inches. Whereas with that 25-yard zero for that CQB god, yeah, he might have been within a couple inches of 25, but he's now 1.5 feet tall at 180. And so I tend to tell people, if you guys run like 3.5 to 4 inch optic heights, probably want to start looking at 100-yard zero. Like any 12 o'clock mounted dot, due to the fastest way I do it is I bag the gun up, I look through the optic, and I go, cool, I'm on that target. I dial the red dot to wherever my reticle was held, and then I verify on paper. It's like 100-yard reticle, 100-yard with the primary, 100-yard with the secondary. Because again, the only thing I have to worry about to 100 yards is less than 4 inches, which means that, okay, center mass, I don't give a shit. That's still this much, maybe. Like on a headshot, if I want to hit you here, I just put the dot on top of your head. I'm gonna put a round right through the bridge of your nose. So that's easier for me to remember than, hey, at 150 yards, I have to hold the bottom of your pelvis because my round is 1.5 feet high. So, but on a 100-yard gun or a hunting gun, like if you want to run a little higher optic, dude, my scope on my AX is a 2.5-inch optic height. The scope on that arrow is like a 2.7. Just because now with those enclosed forends, dude, optics tend to be higher anyways.
Cool, appreciate it. Thanks.
Anything else? I just know you guys don't want to sit here and stare at my beautiful face.
Considering the suppressor cover, how many more shots are you actually buying yourself, utilizing that for heat mitigation before heat rises? It's just going to come out of the end concentrated anyway. Is it 10, 20, 50, 100? At some point, the heat's going to come out.
It's caliber specific.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. I'm shooting those solids literally yesterday. Dude, 114 grain solid at 3,050 feet per second. There is some powder burning out of the end of that sucker. Like I was getting Mirage after like 4 or 5 rounds. But if I'm shooting 55 grain ball, or with a heavier profile barrel, or with, that some of that heat's like just not, or that's a bigger can. And so it's not as much gas put into particular baffles. I think there's a whole bunch of factors playing into that. If you put a K can on a 338 Lapua, that sucker's going to get hot really damn fast. If I'm shooting a 308, shooting an MTU Contour 24-inch barrel where there's not a whole lot of powder coming out of the end of the barrel anyways, and I've got a fairly substantial can, it could be quite a few rounds before that end cap gets hot enough that you're really getting that condensed Mirage off the end.
In consideration of Mirage, when it can't be mitigated, are you just taking a visual average based on how the Mirage is dancing at that particular time to kind of guesstimate what is the true image versus what's being miraged via the scope?
Yeah, that's all. If you really have to take a shot in Mirage, yes. But you kind of do the exact same thing. Not all Mirage is produced by your gun. If you shoot on a hot day where you're shooting over a lot of like rock or sand, you're going to have Mirage before you even pull the trigger. And so you're having to do the exact same thing anyways. And you're basically taking, the average, and you're realizing you're probably gaining plus or minus 0.2 on the bottom or plus or minus 0.2 on the top. And you're kind of going, okay, well, I'm going to aim the middle of that blob that used to be a target. And send it. Shooting Mirage is tough because not only, it's not always gun dependent. And when you're spotting in Mirage and you're trying to see impacts and everything looks like you're, looking through boiling water, it can be, especially with smaller caliber bullets, it can be really hard to pick up those impacts or the splash of a miss. And then you have to basically make your next best educated guess. Did I make not enough wind call? Am I high? Am I low? The biggest mistake I see people see is I'm just going to send another one the exact same way. And then they dig a hole in the exact same spot for 4 or 5 rounds, thinking if I just aim harder, that round is going to do something different. And it's like, dude, your information is wrong. So you have to change something, miss different, do something else, change something, make a stronger wind call, make less wind call, hold higher, do something that heightens your probability for success. But Mirage, not all Mirage is caused by the platform itself. What else? Yeah, send it. Ooh, okay. And they're also hammer forged versus hammer forged nitrited. So basically, what Criterion did was Criterion took a good hammer forging, and what they do is they hand lap their barrels. And so what makes a Criterion is the process after the rifling. And so you get the benefits of a hammer forged barrel with the accuracy of a hand lapped barrel. And so a Criterion is going to last you longer than a Bartlett. A Bartlett is going to have a higher degree of accuracy. Now, I say that I have a 13.9 Bartlett AR, and I have a 14.5 Criterion AR. And it is significantly more about the shooter with those two guns than it is about the barrel. Because the Criterion shoot 85%, 90% as well as those Bartletts for half the price. And so my 16-inch gun that I just moved the barrel over to that Cobalt, I just ordered a Criterion H-bar 16-inch MIDI to put on that receiver set again. I haven't had a Criterion yet that won't shoot, and I have 5 of them, 6 of them, 5 of them. So it's hard because I love Bartlett barrels. Dude, I just got 2 more Bartletts for my bolt guns. I just ordered 2 more Bartletts for some AR-10s, and I have a Criterion 6.5 Creedmoor AR-10 barrel sitting in there. It's hard. It's a hard game to play because you have to play between. Are you trying? If I was going to, okay, here's what I'll tell you. If I was trying to build a DMR with the accuracy as like a match gun, like I'm trying to shoot gas gun matches, like precision gas gun matches, I'd be looking at a nice stainless barrel, whether that is a Centurion Arms. I don't know if Criterion makes them or not. Stainless, or Noveski, Bartlett, Compass Lake, etc. If I was looking for a scope carbine to kind of do a little bit of both, do some carbine stuff, and push a little distance, I was going to run it a little harder, like higher round count type stuff, but I still wanted to get a higher degree of accuracy than like chrome line hammer forged, then I'd probably go Criterion. I think you're going to get significantly higher barrel life with almost as much accuracy, and I don't think you'd be unhappy with it. Yep, and use I think Bruiser 15 will save you some money. So there you go. But do you guys like this format? I mean, so I know guys are gonna be pissed because we're not going to save this, but the rest of them I try to do this on YouTube because I think YouTube Live. I have no idea why they made me wait 24 hours. It's stupid. But trying to give you guys a little bit more in-depth access, live kind of question and answer feedback. Instagram is not really the best for that. I have to kind of scroll through questions and stuff, and it's way harder to search. And so I'm hoping that I can do more of these for you guys, and we don't have to dig through all the trolls and nonsense that's on Instagram. So if you guys like this, feedback's always welcome. Post on the Patreon, send me a DM on Instagram, whatever. If you guys want me to do it differently, hit me up. I want to make it so you guys are getting, your your $5.56 or $7.62 worth out of me. So I appreciate you guys jumping on, and yeah, and I'll try to do this at least every other week, and hopefully in the future there'll be. Oh, I think one of you guys was trying to record this, weren't you? There we go. See, good looking out.
Wait, there was a cheaper option than $100 a month?
Oh,
I got ripped
you didn't
off.
read.
I'm
You didn't read.
kidding.
You
I'm
didn't read the
kidding.
whole
I'm
thing.
kidding.
But yeah. I mean, if you got a Dropbox, man, send it to me. Or yeah. I mean, that'd probably be the easiest way. And then I'll just go into town and download it, and then I'll throw it on. So look at my dogs. Their dog muzzle. And that way I'll post this on YouTube, and then I'll be able to share it for everybody. But guys, I appreciate it, and thank you for kind of helping fund some of this. Dog, get out of here, and hopefully I can use the resources provided by Patreon to help fund some of this testing and stuff, and ammo and whatever. And I'll try to make sure that you guys are getting stuff that isn't just posted. Dude, you're gonna drive me to drinking, and some behind the scenes stuff and more in depth reviews and white papers and that kind of stuff. So Instagram's not that platform, but as I figure out Patreon, hopefully we can offer you guys your money's worth. So if you guys got nothing else, appreciate you all.
Question, Joe.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why don't you have an LMT 308?
Why you gotta bring up old shit, Paul?
My bad.
Because he's going to get the 6.5.
No, he's not. He's going to get a 308.
Well, considering, let's see, right now I have 3 308 AR-10s, and I only have 1 6.5.
Yeah, so you got to get another 308.
Well, I have 2 308 Bartlett's coming, but that's for a company to be named later. That is developing a new AR-10. I just told them that if they're going to make me one, it has to have a Bartlett in it. So I bought the blanks.
We could be twinsies. That's all I'm saying.
No, if I was going to get an LMT, honestly, I would get one of the contract guns. Either the MRGG when they come out, or the Brit contract gun.
Yeah, they're pretty sick.
I'm just an FDE whore. So,
yeah, one day.
Anyways, appreciate you guys. Hope you guys have a good rest of your night, and I'll catch you guys next time.